3 Sinister True Stories of Being Watched. Exposed Secrets That Haunt, Cursed Encounters Revealed. Jenna's heart raced as she stepped into the suffocating darkness of her quiet suburban street in Millbury, Ohio. Shadows slithered along the walls of her cozy home, a deceptive facade that now felt like a prison. Every whisper of wind carried a sinister echo, every rustling leaf a secret that gnawed at her sanity. That day, a phone call from Mrs. Henderson had shattered her mundane life, a warning about disappearances that had left the town trembling. This wasn't just gossip. It was a threat that lurked and pulsed with malevolence, drawing tight the noose around her children's laughter. Just that morning, she tucked Mia and Lucas into bed, reading them their favorite bedtime stories amid the thick veil of calm. But something wasn't right. A chill gripped her heart as she blinked at the flickering candlelight. Stories her mother once told her began to crawl back into her mind, echoing with the mantra of the terrifying watcher who preyed on children. Jenna shook her head, dismissing her own fears. Security alarms didn't make sense in this neighborhood. It was too perfect, too quintessentially American. She tucked Mia's Mr. Snuggles under her arm and forced herself to breathe as she rolled into bed. When Jenna's fingers gripped the steering wheel that night, she felt the pressures of exhaustion tethering her down. Yet, it was the shadow beneath the flickering street lamp that turned her blood cold. Her heartbeat thundered as she drove past, but she shook it off. Just exhaustion, she muttered under her breath. The streets creaked with familiarity, yet the sense of being watched twisted like a knife in her gut. Unable to sleep, she whispered to herself, "It's fine. Just work stress," barely convincing anyone but herself. Days rolled on, weaving a tapestry of unease. Mr. Thompson, the elderly man who seemed harmless with his love for the neighborhood children, loomed over Jenna's thoughts. That unnerving glint in his eye, was she imagining it? She couldn't shake the grip of paranoia. It wrapped around her mind, squeezing, suffocating. What if he knew too much about Mia and Lucas's routines? What if he was the monster hiding in plain sight? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. That morning, Jenna stumbled over muddy Mr. Snuggles outside her door. The stuffed animal, a relic of childhood innocence, was completely out of place. A chill slithered down her spine as visions of darker tales drifted back into focus. Nightmares painted in broad strokes of dread filled her mind. Halloween was approaching, and with it, the hyper-aware instinct to protect her children surged within her like a tidal wave. She could hear laughter and see her children playing, but the shadows, those damn shadows, held other secrets. On Halloween night, the air was thick with festivity, but as she handed out candy, Jenna's gut churned with dread. The cheerful shimmer of costumes felt tainted, the masked faces hiding more than just cheer. A chill permeated through her bones when she noticed figures lingering just outside of sight. She could feel the pressure building, the very air around her thickening with dark intent. Distant laughter echoed, a cruel reminder of something sinister lurking in the dark. Knowing she must act, the weight of the evening draped over her as the bone-deep fear sank in. Was it all just a mirage of her panic, or was she truly teetering on the brink of nightmares yet to unfold? Jenna woke with a jolt, drenched in sweat. The eerie laughter from her dreams still echoed in her ears, slicing through the fog of sleep. It took a moment for her to remember where she was, to shake off the remnants of the dark shadows chasing her in her mind. Daylight crept through the curtains, yet it felt like the sun had dimmed. Her phone buzzed on the bedside table, the sound piercing the lingering shivers of fear. It was a message from Mrs. Henderson. "They found another one. The girls are scared. Keep close to the kids." The message gripped her throat. Another disappearance. The nagging dread tightened like a vice around her chest. After a quick breakfast that Mia and Lucas hardly touched, Jenna decided to take them to the park. Fresh air might wipe away the fog of her anxiety. But as they strolled through the playground, Jenna couldn't shake the feeling of eyes boring into her from the shadows of the trees. Each glance at the children, their laughter, their innocent play, felt like a countdown. Whoever or whatever loomed behind that veil of comfort was watching. A chill gripped her as she instinctively tightened her hold on Mia's hand. The corners of the park seemed darker today, and those familiar trees, tall and protective, now loomed like sentinels of dread. She forced herself to breathe, counting to 3 silently while keeping an eye on Lucas whirling around on the swings. "Mommy, watch me!" Lucas shouted, his squeals of joy barely breaking through the fog of anxiety enveloping her. Jerking her head in his direction, Jenna caught sight of Mr. Thompson sitting on a nearby bench. The old man was staring at the kids, that unnerving glint back in his eye. A flash of unwanted memories sparked stories of children vanishing, exchanged whispers in the neighborhood. Who was this benevolent man? Did it really matter? Doubt gnawed at her, eating away at any remnants of trust she fostered. "Stay close, okay?" she said, attempting to sound lighthearted. "Just a few more minutes." They finished at the park quickly. Maddened with unease, Jenna led her children back home, even as Mia's protests fell on deaf ears. As dusk arrived, the shadows seemed to swell in size. The sky bruised over with dark clouds, a storm brewing on the horizon. Jenna's heartbeat quickened with every creak and groan the house made, echoing around her. With each flicker of the lights, the dark corners began to loom ominously. It felt like the walls themselves were closing in on her. Night fell. The children were tucked in, whispers of the outside world muffled by the thick quilt of comfort. But Jenna couldn't sleep. She kept glancing out through the window, watching, waiting, hoping the stillness was just that. However, a deeper part of her knew it was a facade. Then it happened. A soft tap, tap, tap against the window pane. She froze. Her heart raced like a wild animal, claws clawing at her chest as dread washed over her. "Mommy," Mia's small voice broke through the darkness, sensing her fear. "What is it?" Jenna couldn't answer. She was transfixed by the shape outside, barely discernible against the thickening twilight. The tapping grew more persistent, punctuated by the rustling branches that scratched at the window like skeletal fingers. "Stay in bed," Jenna whispered harshly, her breath catching in her throat. The tapping morphed into a scratching. She crept to the window, heart stuttering violently. A single thought loomed: exposure. What would she find if she opened the blind? Before she could decide, the window shook as if someone or something was trying to get in. Panic flooded her as reality collided with the whispers of the past. Jenna grasped the curtain tightly, her mind racing. She knew she had to protect her children, but the question echoed like a haunting refrain: who was out there? Suddenly the scratching stopped. A sinister silence enveloped the room, thick and suffocating. Then, just like a thief, a voice slithered through the darkness. "Let me in," and in that moment, Jenna knew that the nightmare had only just begun. The voice hung in the air, a slow creeping dread that wrapped around Jenna like tendrils of smoke. Her mind raced with horror, fighting to grasp at the edges of sanity. Was it a trick? A sick joke? Or worse, a promise of something unthinkable? "Mommy, I'm scared," Mia whimpered, clutching her stuffed bunny tighter, eyes wide. Lucas had turned to face his mother, alarm slipping across his small features. Just stay quiet," Jenna whispered, the words barely breaking the tension in the air. She stood frozen, her senses heightened, the world around her morphing into a distorted reality. The soft humming of the night, the chirping of crickets seemed to fade away. All that remained was that voice, chilling her blood. "Let me in," it pleaded again. This time it was overly sweet, like honey wrapped around a blade. The darkness outside felt almost alive, breathing, pulsating with anticipation. A dull thud echoed against the window, jolting her from her petrified state. Something was leaning against it. Her instincts screamed at her to flee to the children's room, to block the door and hide beneath the bed. But she couldn't abandon them. Not now, not ever. She fought against her fear as she anchored herself to the moment. "Who are you?" Jenna called out, her voice wavering as terror threaded through each word. No response. Just silence growing heavier, more menacing. She forced her trembling hands away from the curtain, willing herself to stay in control. "Mommy, I don't want it to get in," Lucas cried out now, and that broke through the haze. She turned, shaking her head at them. "Close your eyes and cover your ears," she commanded, her heart thudding in her ears, a war drum against the encroaching darkness. As they complied, Jenna's eyes darted back to the window. She stepped closer, heart crashing against her ribs with every breath. aware that the shadows were stretching across the ground, darker than the night itself. And then she heard it again, softer, almost a whisper this time. "Let me in, I'm alone." It was as if the creature outside knew how to weave a spell of horror, lulling her into thinking it was harmless. Oh God, what if it were just a child out there? Jenna's breath uneven, she pulled the curtain back just a fraction. Peering into the abyss, her pulse quickened. There was something at the window, a silhouette, dark and twisted against the dim light of the porch lamp. She squinted, trying desperately to discern what it could be. Then her breath caught in her throat. A face appeared that it was a child, maybe 8 or 9, skin pallid and eyes wide with something unsettlingly hollow. "Please, I can't find my mom, I'm scared." Jenna's heart broke and twisted at the same time. But deep inside, that primal fear burned bright. "Stay there. You need to go home," she shouted, the urgency in her voice ringing hollow against the creeping shadows. "Let me in." The voice no longer sounded like a child. It morphed, warped into something sinister, echoing with malice. It was an invitation laced with darkness. Before she could think, her instincts kicked in. She lunged away from the window, slamming the blinds shut, the sound reverberating in her ears like a gunshot. She turned breathless. The children were still huddled together, wide-eyed. "Mommy?" Mia's voice trembled like fragile glass. "What is it? What's out there?" Jenna rushed to her kids, gathering them close. Shoo, it's okay. Just stay quiet." But the pounding of her heart felt deafening. And then, the tapping returned. More forceful this time, like a desperate plea, or a curse trying to break through. Let me in." The walls felt thinner, the shadows drawing closer, nested in their corners like hungry beasts. And then out of nowhere, an idea sparked within Jenna's panicking mind. What if connecting with the outside was what it wanted? With desperate resolve, she decided then and there the house was not safe anymore. "Pack a bag, kids," she yelled urgently, adrenaline surging as she pushed her fear aside. They needed to leave, to find safety somewhere. Anywhere. But as she turned back to grab her phone, there it was again, the voice louder, now full of rage. "You can't escape me." Jenna's heart pounded. Was it true? Was escape even possible? A chill raced down her spine as she tried to compose herself. The next decision stood before her like the edge of a cliff. What would she choose? Finding out could seal their fate. Outside, the storm began to rage. As the first crack of thunder rumbled through the dark expanse, Jenna knew one thing: for better or for worse, they had to confront whatever was out there. And the answer awaited them in the storm. The door shuddered against the wind, a cruel reminder of the chaos waiting outside. Jenna swallowed hard, the sense of dread tightening in her chest. The storm howled, wind slashing against the windows like a frenzied beast eager to get in. Rain began to drum down with relentless fury. "Mia, Lucas, hurry, we need to move," she urged, the panic in her voice pushing through the fear thickening the air. They didn't hesitate. Mia clutched her bunny, eyes darting around the room, while Lucas grabbed his backpack, stuffing in hastily thrown toys and clothes. But Jenna felt the weight of the voice, as if it was pressing down on them, filling the space with something heavy and dark. Another loud thud echoed against the window, this time accompanied by a crack of lightning that illuminated everything for a brief moment. Jenna caught a glimpse of something dark shifting, eyes glinting with a knowing malevolence. She recoiled, breath hitching painfully as dread clawed at her throat. "Mommy, what's that?" Lucas's small voice trembled. Just keep packing. We need to go," Jenna managed to say, reality breaking open around her like fragile glass. Everything felt surreal, disconnected. Was this truly happening? In acrid silence between the crashes of thunder, she thought she might hear a laugh, a ghastly, echoing sound that crawled deep into her gut. She glanced towards the window again, heart racing. Let me in," the voice echoed through the air again, laced with the promise of nightmares. Jenna clamped her hands over her ears, trying to drown it out, but she felt it creeping in through the cracks, taking hold of her mind. Mia began to whimper, her small body shaking. Lucas looked up at her, fear etched starkly across his face. They were losing time, and every second felt like a countdown. "Stay by my side, and whatever happens, don't look back, okay?" she instructed, their bags half-packed, knowing they had to leave, and with each moment they hesitated, the air thickened with malice. Jenna made her way to the front door, the heavy wood staring back at her like an unyielding barrier. The tapping had shifted to a steady pounding, as though whatever was outside had grown impatient, desperate to breach her sanctuary. The sound throbbed in her head, a dark drumbeat that pulled at her sanity. Mia's soft call shattered the silence as she clutched her mother's leg. I don't want to go out there. I know, honey, but we can't stay here not anymore, Jenna exclaimed, forcing herself to be brave, though terror coiled around her heart like a vice. She fought the urge to step back, to slam the door shut, to hide under a blanket forever. Another burst of lightning illuminated the outside. In that brief flash, Jenna thought she saw a figure, blurry but unmistakable. The child from the window, twisted and wrong, standing just beyond the threshold. Let me in, it hissed, confusion mingling with its pain. I just want to play, a scream bubbled in Jenna's throat, but she wouldn't let it break free. We have to go now, she shouted. She swung open the door against the wind, rain lashing her face, the night wrapped in black terror as they stepped outside. Cold droplets pelted against her skin. But what gripped her was the presence, an unseen weight. The deep suffocating sense of something holding its breath, watching them. Run! Jenna shouted, pulling her children towards the car parked a little way down the driveway. Panic consumed her as they dashed into the storm. Rain soaked them, the wind howling like a banshee, but each moment felt like a battle against relentless darkness. Suddenly Lucas stopped. Mom! What about the bunny? Jenna gasped, feeling a sickening twist in her stomach. Mia's beloved toy was still in the house, a beacon to what awaited them. Mia, listen to me, Jenna shouted as she grasped her daughter's shoulders. We'll get it later, I promise. We have to keep moving. But as Jenna turned back towards the house, dread seeped into her bones. There, framed in the swirling storm, the figure stood grinning wider, its eyes boring into her soul, feeding off her fear. Let me in, I'm so lonely, it called out, the voice shadowy and sinister. Heart pounding like a war drum, it struck her. This wasn't just a game. It was a predator. With her children clinging to her side, Jenna steeled herself against the encroaching terror. She wouldn't let it win. Turning away from the entity, they raced toward the car, praying for some kind of escape, praying the storms would be the only peril they faced tonight. But as thunder crashed above them and the shadows whispered all around, she knew whatever had been unleashed had only just begun to play. Would it follow them into the night? The car's engine roared to life, but the familiar sound felt foreign, almost mocking in the storm. Jenna threw a glance over her shoulder, heart pounding as lightning forked across the sky, illuminating the scene behind them for a split second. The figure was gone, swallowed by swirling sheets of rain. Breathless, Jenna slammed the gear into drive, tires screeching against the wet asphalt as they sped away from the house. She could feel Mia's small body tense beside her, a bundle of quivering nerves. Lucas sat in the back, his eyes wide with fear, holding tightly to the remnants of his backpack. The storm raged, but it was the haunting thought that they had left something behind that gnawed at her, something important. Mom, I'm scared, Mia whimpered, clutching her bunny tighter, drowning in the sea of tears beginning to flow down her cheeks. I know, sweetie. Just keep holding on, Jenna soothed, her voice barely masking the terror clawing at her throat. The radio crackled, the familiar voice of the DJ interrupted by static, a warning report about the storm rolling through. But there was something else buried beneath the chaos, whispers crawling under her skin, things that shouldn't be there, teasingly familiar yet terrifying. Mom, what if it follows us? Lucas asked, his small voice shaking. It can't get us. We're safe in the car, she tried to reassure him, though her own heart raced with uncertainty. The night felt impossibly heavy and foreboding, shadows creeping alongside them as if the darkness itself had come alive. But the pounding rain was relentless, intensifying. The windshield wipers fought to keep visibility, but it seemed futile. It was as if the storm was tasked with obscuring something more terrifying. Suddenly the lights flickered. For just a moment, Jenna felt an icy draft creeping through the closed windows as if the air itself was seeping into the car, thick and suffocating. She shivered, instinctively glancing into the rearview mirror. There it was again, a glimpse of movement just beyond the glow of the headlights, shadows twisting and melding into something grotesque. Jenna gasped, gripping the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles white. Mia, close your eyes, she commanded, heart racing as adrenaline surged. Don't look. But do it. The sharpness in her tone cut through Mia's protest, forcing her to obey. Lucas turned, unsure, confusion stamped on his little face, But he quickly followed suit, head dipping down, small hands covering his eyes. The shadows were no longer just shadows. With a deep breath, Jenna took a sharp turn down an unfamiliar road, the tires skidding on the slick surface. Her hands were trembling, sweat pooling in the small of her back despite the cold that enveloped the night ahead. There was a flicker of light, an old house, dilapidated and dark, but with a single light bulb swinging weakly from the porch. It was a beckoning glow amidst the dark and swirling storms. "Please, it can't stay with us," Jenna muttered, feeling the urge to flee unrelenting as something sinister clawed in the pit of her stomach. But its call was compelling, seductive in its familiarity, echoing memories she couldn't place. The house appeared closer now, an anchor in the chaos, yet it filled her with unease, a sense of wrongness, the familiarity of dread. Jenna's mind raced. "We can't stop," she shouted, though her flickering hopes wavered like the light bulb dimming in the storm. But the car seemed to have a mind of its own, taking its course as it turned toward the house. "Mom!" Lucas shrieked, panic rising like a tide. "We can't go there." I know," she shouted, but it felt too late. The house loomed over them, its walls stretched and creaking as if alive. As they rolled to a stop, Jenna felt it, a dreadful weight filling the car, a presence that was undeniably watching. The shadows danced, whispering secrets she couldn't comprehend. "I'm so lonely," it echoed again, a haunting sound that resonated deep in her bones. In that moment, she realized maybe it was never about the storm, but what had come to play under its cover. They were not alone. What choice would they make next? Would they dare to confront the darkness, or would it consume them all? The wind howled around the car, a visceral growl that made the metal tremble. Jenna's breath quickened as she looked at the deserted house, its porch light flickering like a dying star, casting eerie shadows that seemed to dance mockingly. "Mia, stay down," Jenna whispered, but Mia's whimpers crept up, filling the air. Lucas, still curled up in the back seat, peeked through his fingers, face pale as he began to tremble. Jenna's heart thudded in her chest. She wanted to flee from that house, from whatever darkness had clung to them, but the weight of it all anchored her in place. The car felt small and helpless against the vastness of the storm, and in that moment, she understood that the light beckoning was not a safe haven, it was a trap. "Mom," Lucas whispered hesitantly, "maybe we should just try to know." The word burst from her lips, sharper than she meant. "We can't go inside." Suddenly, a loud thud echoed against the car roof, punctuated by a deafening clap of thunder. The kids jumped, eyes wide, breaths now shallow. Jenna turned her gaze upward, dread coiling in her stomach. She glanced at the roof. Was something up there? With trembling fingers she turned off the engine, drawn by the urgency of silence. "Do you hear that?" she asked in a whisper, the rain drumming a rhythm that masked the air thick with tension. With an overwhelmingly strange clarity, she realized the whispers had grown. They twisted through the air, curling around her mind, unsettling and intimate. The voice so familiar, almost like a sweet lullaby drawn close, yet landscape over unfamiliar terrain. The light flickered again, and in that fleeting glow she saw it, a shape, slouched against the porch of the house, soaking wet, hair matted, gaze fixed upon them. The darkness hid its features, but the feeling it exuded was undeniable, a deep, gnawing sadness that transcended fear. A memory clawed at Jenna's mind, fragments of long-filled spaces that felt hollow now, as if it had once housed love. "Mom, get us out of here," Lucas pleaded, voice tinged with despair. Jenna's instincts screamed at her to comply, to drive until she reached safety. But that voice, the unbearable need to understand what had this entity lost? What was behind the mournful energy pooling around them like shadowy fog? "Jenna," the voice whisked through the night, low and resonating. It sounded as if amusement flickered behind a veil of sadness. "You can't escape me. I've always been where you left me." The kids realized at the same time that the sound came from inside the house, mingling with the voices in their heads, incoherent yet hauntingly beautiful. "Mom, please," Mia cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. And in that desperate moment, Jenna felt a pull deeper than fear, a morbid curiosity. The car felt increasingly stifling, a connection growing to the darkness crawling closer. Against her better judgment, she slid the door open, the wind flooding inside as the rain poured in. Jenna stared, caught between the figure on the porch and her children, every ounce of reason battling the grasp of something dark, something primordial, begging her to understand without thinking. Driven by a force she couldn't identify, she stepped out into the rain. Everything exploded. The storm, the whispers, the pull of memories lost. "Come home," it begged, the air thick with an urgency that sliced through her like cold steel. In that chilling moment, the reality of choice pressed against her. Behind her lay the safety of her children. Before her the whispering darkness holding promises unknown. As lightning illuminated the sky, she felt the weight of the house's eyes upon her, the shadows tightening like a noose. What choice remained when the darkest corners of her soul stirred awake? The presence, so lonely and waiting. And as the rain washed over her, Jenna felt the thin line between fear and something sinister twist ominously, pulling her deeper into the unknown. Would she uncover the truth, or would she be consumed by it? The rain poured relentlessly, drenching Jenna to the bone as she stood on the threshold, caught in a tempest of terror and yearning. The figure on the porch shifted slightly, its form becoming more defined. A glimmer of hair caught the lightning, revealing a face that twisted between the familiar and the grotesque. Her heart thrummed a frantic beat, memories threatening to rise to the surface, but she couldn't remember. Not yet. "Mom, come back." Lucas's voice was a lifeline, but it faded into the storm's roar, assimilating into the cacophony of nature's fury, and the dark lullaby enticing her forward. Jenna held her breath. The air was thick, tainted with longing and despair, the kind that wrapped around her throat like a vice. The figure raised a hand, fingers curling toward her, beckoning. For a moment, she thought she could reach out and touch all her lost moments, all the love and pain that had been swallowed by time. The whispers grew, soothing yet insistent, a cadence that shimmered with promise and peril. "Mia? Lucas?" She turned her head, glancing back to the car, her heart in turmoil. Their faces pressed against the glass, eyes wide with terror. Torn, she stepped further into the rain, droplets mixing with her own tears. It didn't feel cold. It felt electric, alive. "Jenna," the voice surged again, filling the air with a resonance she couldn't ignore. "Don't you remember?" She was swaying on her feet, caught between worlds. Footsteps resounded in her mind, echoes of familiarity weaving through the fabric of the storm. Moments from her childhood flickered, spinning in the yard, laughter wrapping around the echoes of the past, her mother's south arms holding her close. But that was gone, lost, buried beneath a shroud of grief and despair. "Please don't leave us," Lucas cried, his small voice breaking through her daze, yanking her back to the present moment. She felt the primal urge to protect, the quickening desperation of maternal instinct igniting like a match in a dark room. "Is it really you?" she shouted into the storm, her voice cracking. The figure paused, and the air thickened with silence, heavy as a funeral shroud. The house creaked, the timbers groaning under unseen pressure. She searched the shadowy depths of its eyes, trying to gauge if the essence she sensed was kindness or cunning. Then, as if the very fabric of reality was tearing, the whispers converged into a single word, a deep echo that bounced within her skull. "Remember." With that, a blinding flash of lightning illuminated the figure, and Jenna gasped, vision sharpening for the briefest moment. The face charred with darkness, but there was something else. A memory flooded her consciousness, a name tangled in the threads of loss. Jenna stumbled, a hand instinctively going to her throat as panic surged through her veins. "Emery?" she breathed, incredulity mixing with horror. The figure's lips rippled in a smile, yet they were twisted, a mirror reflecting her deepest fears. The sound of glass breaking snapped her back. Mia shrieked, the echo of shattering glass slicing through the quiet chaos. "Mom! It's getting worse." Jenna jerked her head back toward the car, heart racing, fear flooding in like ice water. The shadows from the house seemed to extend like tendrils, reaching for her, pulling her deeper into their sinister embrace. "Oh!" Lucas screeched, terror lacing his voice. In that split second, Jenna's instincts sharpened. She had to act. Confusion twisted within her, but the clarity of protecting her children won over. She turned back to the figure, face set with resolve. "No more. You won't take me or them." But the figure only tilted its head, fascination sparking in those dark eyes. "You can't escape the truth, Jenna. It will find you." With a final heart-stopping glance, Jenna dashed back toward the car, adrenaline thrumming through her limbs. The shadows writhed wildly, the house groaning like a beast awakened. Rain lashed at her skin like icy fingers as she reached for the door. But the handle wouldn't budge. Panic surged once more. "No! Let us in!" she screamed, desperation spilling from her like a torrent. And as she turned to face the looming darkness inside the house, it whispered once more, echoing like the final chime of a funeral bell, "You can never leave." Jenna's heart pounded in her ears as she felt the shadows close in. Would the truth unveil itself, or would they all be swallowed whole by the past lurking within those crumbling walls? The question lingered like a gash in the storm, a wound yet to heal. In that moment, every heartbeat screamed its answer. Their survival depended on unraveling the mysteries entwined with the house. Time was running out. What awaited them inside was far more terrifying than the storm outside. Jenna's fingers fumbled with the door handle, a growing sense of dread pooling in her gut as the shadows seemed to loom closer, whispering secrets she didn't want to hear. The rain pounded harder, each drop like a warning, intensifying the sense of urgency that enveloped her. "Mia! Lucas! Hold on!" she yelled, her voice shrill above the chaos. She stepped back, forcing her breaths to calm, her mind racing. Desperation turned into determination. She wouldn't let them take her family, not again. With one swift motion, she raised her foot, slamming it against the door. It rattled violently but held firm. Glass fragments danced in the air around her, glimmering like tiny stars against the oppressive darkness. The house groaned, the old structure echoing with disapproval, as if angry at her resistance. Time was slipping through her fingers, washed away by the relentless downpour. High in the periphery, she caught a glimpse of the figure on the porch, its spectral form slowly dissipating into the shadows, her mother's face melting into something unrecognizable. The familiarity twisted into something tainted as it reinforced the memories she struggled to recall. "Mom! Please!" Lucas's voice trembled, little hands pounding against the window. Tears streaked down Mia's cheeks. The desperation on their faces ignited a fire within Jenna. She couldn't let them fall prey to the darkness. She stepped back again, shaking out her nerves, and readied herself. This time when she kicked the door she felt the wood shudder. The sound of splintering echoed, mingled with the rhythm of the storm. A crack emerged, swallowing the air like a dark void. Then it burst open. Jenna tumbled into the dimly lit interior, heart racing, the air heavy and stale, pressed against her skin like an impending heart attack. The house was alive, its walls creaking with a longing that resonated deep within her. She darted back, eyes adjusting to the chaos of the room, peeling wallpaper, dusty furniture draped in white sheets, the unmistakable scent of decay. "Jenna!" Lucas called, his voice racked with fear. "I'm here," she replied, clenching her fists. "Stay close." But the shadows coiled around her, reaching out like 1,000 wandering hands, tugging at her existence. They whispered in a chorus, weaving through her mind, insistent and probing. "Remember, it's time to remember." The flickering light bulb above her buzzed and flickered, casting eerie shadows. Each flicker danced through her memories, teasing her with glimpses of the past. A child's laughter, the warmth of her mother's embrace. It felt just out of reach. "Mom?" It escaped her lips barely above a whisper, fear clenching like a vice around her heart. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of pleading voices, pulling at her sanity. Just then, a sudden loud crash echoed from the back of the house. Jenna's instinct kicked in. "Stay here," she ordered, and before they could protest, she stepped cautiously towards the source. Her breaths were rapid, tension thrumming. Each footstep crunched over broken glass and debris, the noise amplified in the ominous silence that followed the storm. The shadows elongated, curling and bending, revealing shapes that twisted at the edges of her vision. As she turned the corner, she stopped dead in her tracks. The room was empty, but a dark curtain hung in front of a doorway. From behind it, a low guttural moan resonated, sending shivers rippling down her spine. "No, this isn't happening," Jenna muttered, a hollow pit forming where her stomach used to be. The moan grew, escalating into a desperate wail that seemed to claw at the very fabric of her being. The sound echoed like a bell tolling a warning, reverberating deep within her soul. "Mia! Lucas!" she screamed, urgency amplifying her every word as she stumbled back, heart pounding wildly. What lay behind that curtain, she feared, was the truth, but did she dare uncover it? Would confronting the memory transform their fate, Or would it lead them further into the clutches of the darkness? As the wail crescendoed, pressing against her ears, Jenna grasped the curtain, fingers trembling. Her breath hitched, and her heart thudded like a hammer. Please, please, she babbled, terror gripping her throat as she prepared to pull it aside. But what awaited her would shake every foundation she thought she knew. The fabric felt cold against Jenna's clammy hands, an insidious chill creeping into her bones. She hesitated, every instinct screaming at her to turn and run, to escape the wailing that clawed at her essence. But the desperate cries of her children echoed in her mind, blending with the ghostly whispers that haunted the air like a thick fog. With a deep, shuddering breath, she yanked the curtain aside. What she saw sent shockwaves through her body. A figure, frail and distorted, knelt in the dimness, its back turned to her. A large, dark mass loomed over it, the source of the wail bulging and pulsating as if alive. Jenna's stomach twisted, and bile rose in her throat. She had expected horror, but this was something far worse than she could have imagined. "Get away!" she cried, panic coursing through her veins. The figure turned, revealing hollow eyes sunk deep in a skeletal face, the skin stretching too tightly around its features. It resembled her mother, yet it felt like an affront to the memory of the woman she loved. Jenna's voice cracked, grappling with disbelief. Before she could process her thoughts, the shadows intensified around the entity, rolling and swirling like smoke, bending reality around it. The wail transformed into a cacophony of voices, blending together in a nightmarish chorus. It wasn't just her mother, it was a multitude, countless souls mixed into one shuddering entity. "Jenna!" The figure rasped, a grotesque parody of the comforting sound she once remembered. "You shouldn't have come here." Suddenly, the wailing stopped. Silence slammed against her ears, cold and suffocating. Jenna staggered backward, heart thumping, fighting against the instinct to flee. She glanced back towards the hallway where Lucas and Mia waited, their innocent trust glimmering in the depths of the darkness. "Mom, what is it?" Lucas's voice tremored, yet held a vestige of hope. "Stay back," she shouted, feeling trapped between the specter and her children. The dark figure slowly rose to its feet, looming over Jenna like a shroud. It pointed a skeletal finger toward her, the gesture as accusatory as it was beckoning. "You left us to this torment," it lamented. "You must know the truth. They must not suffer what you have." A violent gust of wind swept through the room, sending dust swirling and causing the candlelight to flicker dangerously, illuminating fragmented images on the walls. Memories of a past filled with laughter, warmth, and pain danced before her eyes, twisting into unspeakable horrors. "What truth?" Jenna breathed, but it was drowned out by the storm outside, merging with the tempest within her heart. The walls seemed to pulse, as if echoing a heartbeat, the heartbeat of the house, the heartbeat of the memories locked within. Then came another gasp, a sharp inhalation from behind her. Jenna whipped around to find Mia, eyes wide, captivated by the unfolding nightmare. "Mom, what is happening?" Lucas's small frame peeked around Mia, forming a barrier against the unseen threat. Jenna's heart plummeted. She felt the weight of their trust, the burden of protecting them pressing down. One choice, a single moment to shield them. In that instant, the shadows lunged again, wrenching Jenna's attention back to the figure as it twisted, melding with the darkness in grotesque ways. It moaned once more, a haunting sound that echoed through her very soul. "Pull them in. Pull them all in," it cried, the tone shifting from sadness to mania. Jenna's breath hitched. She reached back, grabbing Mia's arm, feeling the warmth of her child against the cold air. "No, we need to go. Now." As if the shadows sensed her resolve, they writhed violently, crashing against her, threatening to swallow her whole, to drag her down into the darkness below. "Leave. You should have never returned," the figure screamed, its hollow eyes reaching for Jenna, desperate, with one last look back into the eyes of her mother's spectral face, once loving, now twisted. Jenna made her choice. The chilling reality of a choice awaited her at the doorway of salvation. But would she choose light or darkness? As she turned to flee, the house itself seemed to protest, groaning under the weight of secrets, each step towards the exit a battle against the suffocating shadows. Would escape come at a cost greater than she could bear? Would the curse of this place follow them long after the storm subsided? Jenna's eyes widened, a terrible realization rooting her in place. She was not alone. Something else lingered in the doorway, silent and watchful. "Run!" she erupted, her voice slicing through the oppressive gloom as they tore away from the horror within, because deep down, she feared that this was just the beginning. As Jenna stumbled back into the storm, her heart thundered in her chest, a relentless drumbeat against the chaos roaring around them. The rain dripped from her hair, blending with the salt of her tears, each droplet filled with fear and resolve. The shadows lingered just beyond, tugging at her mind, whispering secrets that clawed at her sanity. "Mom, what's wrong?" Lucas's small voice broke through her swirling thoughts, his face pale, eyes wide with terror. She turned to see him and Mia clinging to each other, both shivering under the unrelenting downpour. Jenna shook her head, forcing herself to focus. "We need to get away from the house," she urged, gripping their hands tightly. The darkness behind them roiled like smoke, and her instincts screamed to run. But retreating felt so damn wrong. They couldn't just leave behind what happened there. What twisted roots still buried deep in the ground, clawing its way into their lives. "Mom, please," Lucas begged, more desperate than before. "It's coming." And in that moment Jenna steeled herself. They were running out of time. "Okay, we're going to find a way to end this," she said, feeling a flicker of courage. "We face the darkness together." With that, they dashed toward the edge of the overhanging porch of the old house, all soaked and shivering. The flickering light bulb cast elongated shadows that danced like demons waiting to snatch at their heels. "Hold on to me," she yelled, leading them down their only path ahead. In the distance, sirens blared, an unwelcome reminder that the world outside was falling apart as well. Cars sped past, oblivious to the horrors hidden behind the walls of the husk they had stumbled upon. If they could just find someone, anyone who could help Mom. "Look." Mia's voice quivered as she pointed upwards. A figure stood outlined against the weak porch light. A woman drenched and shivering, each raindrop clinging to her like a second skin. But something in the way the woman tilted her head set alarm bells clamoring in Jenna's mind. "Run!" Jenna shouted, pushing the children behind her as realization hit her. The woman's face twisted grotesquely, her mouth opening wide as she beckoned. "Let me in," she screamed, words mingling bizarrely with the howling wind. "No, you're not real," Jenna cried, turning with determination, back toward the car. As they sprinted away, Jenna felt the darkness swirling around them, pressing in with an insidious whisper. "You can never leave," but they were already at the car, and Jenna fumbled desperately for the keys. Her fingers were numb with fear as she finally found them and fumbled to unlock the doors. "Mia! Lucas! Get in!" She yanked the door open and shoved her kids inside. The stench of rain-soaked upholstery and fear filled the air as they scrambled onto the back seat, eyes darting to the windows where the shadows ebbed and flowed. But it wasn't just shadows. There was something out there, something waiting. Jenna slid into the driver's seat, panting, adrenaline racing her pulse higher. "Please start," she whispered, praying the engine would cooperate. She turned the key and the engine sputtered, whined, and nothing. "Come on." She turned it again, heart lurching. The engine roared to life. Relief flooded her, but the sound of the storm turned sinister. Drums pounding against the roof, pounding against the very fabric of reality. "Mommy! It's on the roof," Lucas stammered, shivering as he pointed. His small body tensed. A quick glance in the rearview mirror sent fear shooting through her veins. Dark shapes shifted, their outlines against the silver streaks of water danced. The figure, was it clawing its way down the car? Jenna slammed her foot on the gas, careening out of the gravel driveway, splashing through puddles like a raging bull. "Hold on," she shouted, tires screeching against slick asphalt as they careened forward. They fled down the country road, the storm sweeping wildly, but in the rearview she caught a final glimpse of that haunting figure, only this time it was flanked by the many shadows that seemed desperate to pursue them. They needed to outrun. No, outrun wasn't enough. They had to confront what it represented. "Mom!" Mia whimpered from the back seat, the raw fear bleeding through her small voice, and that snapped Jenna back to her purpose. "Hold on tight. We're going to face it," she roared, voice fierce, reignited with determination. "We have to break this cycle once and for all." Lucas's wide eyes blinked rapidly, shaken. He nodded and grabbed Mia's hand. "We can fight," he exclaimed, his spirit strengthening. Thunder rumbled overhead, A drumroll echoing through the chaos as the realization dawned on Jenna. The storm, the house, it was more than a haunting. It was their past, tangled in grief and despair that needed to be transformed. With renewed determination, Jenna sped towards the heart of Millbury, where the truth would lay bare. Underneath the storm's wrath she searched. Where could they resist the echoes of the past? Where could they send away the darkness twisted by loss? "Mom, I love you." Mia's voice pierced the air, grounding the tumult swirling inside Jenna's chest. "I love you too. Always." They were family. They were strong together. With that, amid the crashing storm and all-encompassing shadows, Jenna felt ready to confront whatever awaited them. They were done running. This time they would stand their ground, fight for their truth, and cleanse the darkness that threatened to take them. As they barreled through the flooded streets, the faint glimmers of storm-torn lights broke through the haze. There was hope in the night. And though they hadn't shaken off the shadows yet, they had ignited a fire for within this storm. They would reclaim their light. As Jenna slammed the foot on the accelerator, her heart surged with strength. The night was theirs to conquer. No more shadows. This was their time. Don't wait even one more second. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel, so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will blow your mind. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this gripping finale. And don't forget to instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support.